welcome for our Career Development Alumni Relations webinar series. I am so glad that you're here today. And today I'd like to talk about intention setting for results. It's going to build on a lot of the things that we might have spoken about in prior webinars, all of which are actually recorded and available on Yale School of Management's YouTube channel. And there are more to come in 2021. So please check out the alumni events page on the portal and be sure not only to check out the career development webinars, but also to check out all the other wonderful content that's planned as well. So my name is Cindy Cornell. I'm the career coach for working professionals at the Yale School of Management, working with both our matriculating MBA for executive students as well as our alumni. And it's a pleasure to serve both populations. And I'm really happy to say in this challenging year, 2020, and all the craziness that it's brought, that I've had a lot of conversations recently with people about multiple offers that they've received and about negotiating those offers. So things are happening, things are moving, there are opportunities out there. And that kind of brings us to our topic today. It makes it a heck of a lot easier to get those opportunities and to achieve the outcomes that you want in business and in life, if you in fact know what you want. So, and are clear about that and can communicate that. So when I originally thought about this topic, I was thinking about sharing one particular framework, and then I stepped back and I thought about it a little bit more. And there's a couple of frameworks that I often speak about with people in coaching sessions. So I thought it would be maybe useful to share all three of them with you. And we can talk about how they actually work together. And I am leaving time at the end to answer your questions. So to the extent that you might have some ideas about how you want to use them, or you want some further clarification, I hope that you'll reach back and ask in the Q&A function. And also, for those of you who are alumni or current students, please don't hesitate to reach out and have a coaching conversation if you want to dig into this more deeply yourselves. So with that, I'm going to dive right in. So this is about helping to make it easier for you to get the results that you want. And as I said, in business and in life. So we're going to talk about frameworks that help you to drive results, whether you're preparing for a quick chat on an elevator, a complex business negotiation, or a consultation maybe with a potential new client. Sometimes we're going to talk about, kind of just figuring out what are those things that really make you happy, and how do we focus on and bring those things into our lives too. So moving right ahead, first things first, I want to make sure that we're focusing on time together. So hopefully your microphones are, I believe, all muted at this point. Please ask questions through the Q&A function. And as I said, reach out to me with personal follow-up questions. I also do want to say a quick thank you and a shout out to Kayla Heaslip, who's in our Alumni Relations office. Without her support, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you to Kayla and the rest of the Alumni Relations team for making this all possible. A recording will be available today following the session if there's any points that you'd like to go over. And also we are working with closed captioning for the first time. So we'll have that for those folks that might want to read what I'm saying also. Because I know that I can't smoothly present and go through Q&A, I'm going to actually hold off on the Q&A to the end. Though if something pops up during the session, please don't hesitate to populate the Q&A right away. So our agenda is really to look at these three models that I mentioned to you, and I'll go through each of them with some detail. We'll talk before we get in there about kind of why we want to use those models and why it's important, and then we'll move right into wrap up. So again, three models: RAFT, intersections, and wild success. Why are we thinking about these things? And some of these messages you'll remember from some of our prior webinars. Taking the time to determine what you want and why it's important to you is going to improve your life, and it's really work worth doing. And I will say also that the people that I've worked with this year that have had the greatest successes, either in things that are happening with them in their personal lives or in job transitions or promotions or navigating challenging environments, the ones that kind of dug in and did this work and did the journaling and wrote things down and got them their ideas out of their heads and onto paper where they could really wrestle with them, those people got really wonderful results. So it's hard to get great results if you don't do the work. I talk with people all the time also that are unhappy with their current circumstances because they got what they thought they wanted, and it turned out that that wasn't really well aligned with their goals and their values. So a couple of the key takeaways I'm going to share with you now, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about them at the end and we'll see how they all fit together. First of all, we don't usually get what we don't ask for. So if we're clear about what we want, it makes it a heck of a lot easier for the universe and our networks to offer those opportunities up to us. Second idea, and it's kind of sales 101, a confused mind doesn't buy. So if we aren't sure what we want, it's going to be really hard for the people that we're talking to help us in finding that thing. You're the expert in your life, you're the expert in your business, and it's super important for you to stay engaged in that way in terms of how things might shift over time, and continuing to clarify what you need and when you need it. On the flip side, when we're talking to companies that are looking for jobs, or if you're talking with, kind of even a spouse in terms of navigating a difficult situation, sometimes we don't even know what we want. So you might be on the other side of it where you're helping a potential employer, for example, really clarify what their business opportunities are in a way that you're going to help them to see that you're the best person to bring in to help them to solve that. So confused mind doesn't buy. We find what we seek. Again, I talk to people all the time about beliefs that they hold to be true and facts. Oh, it's not possible for me to get a job in that function because, or, people like me don't get that, or I need this certification to do that, or whatever these things are. I often ask people, what's the proof you have for that? And many times it's simply a thought that they've had over and over again. And it's not actually something that's rooted in true fact that we can actually, kind of look at objectively and support. So understanding where those beliefs are and making sure that we are really actually giving ourselves permission to look for those things that we want. And when we start to look for them, it's quite funny oftentimes that we can actually find those things. I'm thinking of another quick story on that. I had a conversation with someone once who was looking for some very specific data. They were interviewing with a healthcare institution, and they wanted to know the incidence of a certain type of infection for a certain type of surgery. And they said it wasn't anywhere on the website. And there was something about that was important. They wanted to have a conversation about that in the interview. And it occurred to me that that's the type of thing, if I were a hospital, I would want to self-report rather than have somebody else report for me. It took me about 3 minutes to find that thing that they thought wasn't there, because I had this belief that it was, they had this belief that it wasn't. By having that piece of information, they had a very different conversation than they would have had they not actually found that. And if they were simply just looking at, kind of asking the question in the initial interview, as opposed to commenting on the circumstances and how to make them better. So that's just another idea. And then this idea of we manifest what we focus on. We get what we focus on. It's kind of a corollary to we find what we seek. If you're focusing on what's bad or what's broken or what's not working, it's those things that are going to, grow larger in our mind space. And if we focus on what we do want and what would be a better situation, or how we would like to feel, or whatever the situation is, we tend to be able to call that into being a bit faster. So this is why I want to kind of focus with you today on intention setting. And it really does have wonderful applications across your whole life. A final one, as we're kind of in the holidays, I'm remembering a conversation I had with a coaching client some years ago before I started at SOM. And this person was talking about, and if only we could actually be in the situation of visiting with our families over the holidays. They were anxious about getting together because of the discontent or the arguments that invariably have happened in the past. And we talked about what a really amazing vacation and holiday and visit would look like. And we went through some of these models and some of this thinking, and they came back afterwards and they were like, oh my goodness, I had the most amazing time with my family. And there were no arguments because they had really clearly created an intention about how they wanted to show up and what they were going to engage in and what they weren't going to engage in. So it has some practical applications with family, especially around the holidays as well. So even if we're actually only visiting them this year by Zoom. So let me not give you any more introduction in terms of why we're here, but instead dive right into the first of the three models. The first one I want to share with you is the RAFT template or the RAFT model. As a coach, I think about thinking every single day. And this model is one that's really powerful because it focuses on thinking and it helps us to see it in ways that maybe we haven't in the past. When we think about thoughts, those thoughts lead us to have certain feelings. And those feelings cause us to behave or act in certain ways. And those actions or behaviors yield results. So if we can actually get to a place of noticing our thoughts, we're able to, in any circumstance, we're able to then say, is this thought serving me, or is this thought actually getting me to a result that I'm not actually wanting? Current state, desired state. I'm showing you two different places. The cool thing about this model, or a cool thing about this model, is you can play with it from a whole bunch of different places. You can say, oh my gosh, I just had a meeting with my boss and I really don't feel good. And I don't want to feel that way again. I want to feel a different way. So you can start from that feeling and say, okay, if I felt, this other way instead, how might I have acted differently? And what results might, accrue to that in the future? Or you might start with a result, or to finish that first thought, you can then go back to say, what would I need to think to feel that way? So we can start to identify the thoughts that cause us to feel certain ways and what might be different. You can start at the results and you could say, hey, we've done this same thing over and over again. And, we've all heard the adage, doing the same thing over and over again is never, ever going to get you a different result. So this is where we want to do something different. So let's start with a different, what is the result we want? If we can clarify that, we can then back into that one as well. So thinking about what are the behaviors, if we're thinking about it more in a larger systems theory, we're going to be looking at who else is involved with this. That's going to cause us to have some different conversations. And there's another model we'll talk about a little bit later that might help you to clarify, what you want to say to who and when there. And then, just thinking about how do we get everybody on board to this new result? How do you want people to feel? And what do you want those people to think as a result? So how do we actually kind of frame that all up? So this is just the, kind of the framework. You can potentially, after this session, I'll share the slides with Kayla. You can print this page out and potentially use it, or just, I have people sometimes that just write RAFT and they mark it out on their own pieces of paper. Useful, really useful for you to be in the space of writing these ideas down, because one of the cool things, I geek on neuroscience quite often as a coach as well. How do we make new habits? Those types of things. We sometimes can hold different ideas, conflicting ideas in our brain and think one after the other. And because of their closeness in terms of how or when we thought them, we think them to be concurrently true when in fact they aren't. When we see it in black and white on a piece of paper or typed or wherever, however you like to take your notes, it's easier for us to see patterns and to see where things don't totally line up and what we might need to do to help them to line up. One last thing before I move into a different kind of view of the RAFT model is to, again, thinking about the brain and neuroscience. When we are activated, when we are anxious, when we are feeling threatened, or if we are afraid that we're not going to be well liked or that we're going to be criticized, we often dive right back into the base brain, into the reptilian brain, the amygdala. And if we're, maybe not right there in that fight, flight, freeze place, we might just be a little bit above that in the back of the brain, in the limbic system, the more base mammalian brain. That's all emotive. We're all down below in this thinking and feeling, and it's not actually helping us to achieve or act the way we want to and to achieve the results we want. So If all of the blood is in the base brain, it's not in the prefrontal cortex. This is another reason to write this stuff down. Recognize what might be triggers for you, where you think things that aren't serving you, and be thoughtful about what you might want to think instead the next time that thing comes up. When we are not performing really well, oftentimes our thinking is outside in, it's judgmental. It's where we come into a lot of should talking, which is extrinsic. I want you to kind of really use this model to help you own your thinking and have it be more inside out. You are in control. And when you're in control, the speed and the quality of your thoughts is often much more slow and intentional and of a higher quality than when we're in this space of, oh my gosh, and then this has got to happen, and then that's going to happen, which is very, very fast and low quality. So a couple of different reasons why this is important. I'm going to stop talking about that now and then give you a different visual. So I talked a minute ago about our thoughts being kind of below the waterline. Here is what that might look like. When we are outside, kind of in business, in life, and stuff happens that we can see, that's the above the waterline thing in this iceberg model. We see the actions and we see the results. So this model is also helping us to think about what's underneath the water, the thoughts and the feelings that people are having, and different people have different thoughts and feelings at different points in time. So this is where perspective taking is going to be important as well. So as I shared this model, I was sharing it really with you from a perspective of your own thinking, current state, future state. You can also be thinking about this as you're managing people, as you're talking to your kids, as you're managing your teams. This is a really nice model to think about where are they coming from and how do we want to get to new places. So a couple of examples, I gave a few earlier, and these don't kind of go straight up, but rather are giving you ideas about how you can actually start in one place or another place. Let's kind of look at behaviors. I have a poor diet. I don't exercise. I drink between 5 and 7 cups of coffee a day. And you can think about what does that actually lead to, or how do you feel when you actually kind of go for that other cup of coffee? I'm just feeling so tired. I need more coffee. If you want to get to this desired state of I eat well and I exercise regularly, we can actually back up from that and think about what are the thoughts that you would need to have to feel the way you would need to feel to behave that way, where you're eating well and exercising regularly, you're making those choices for yourself. And then what happens at the end, where you are in that space, you probably are a really wonderful role model for your family and your friends. You're probably getting better results at work and in life. You're probably much more energetic and athletic. And, there's a whole lot of, a whole host of things that could come from that. Another one, if we started in with, maybe a goal, maybe you have a new job, a new role, and you are really kind of setting yourself up and saying, in 3 months' time, if I think about, my 90-day plan, I really want my direct reports to say they love working with me. Then you can actually, kind of look at the current state, and you might be kind of new and you're not really sure what's happening. And, a couple of people might've said, well, I'm not sure if that's right, that this person is right for the job. They're, they don't quite understand what's going on, or they've pointed out my negative points and haven't acknowledged me for anything. There you can actually start to think about, okay, am I doing that? Or there's some data points here. How do I need to behave to get to this new desired state? And what has triggered me to actually be focusing on the negative? This is another hint. Oftentimes bad behavior in business or in life is rooted in insecurity. So if you are behaving anything other than optimally, it might be that there's something going on for you where you're feeling threatened or attacked. So again, if you can figure out what do I need to do to feel safe in this situation, and how is it that as a leader, I'm here to get results through other people? How do I need, and really going back over to that place of, I'm not going to get great results if I keep, kind of beating them with the stick. I need to actually try something new to get these great results. So how do we, move to a space of inspiration versus motivation, to the negative? You're going to actually kind of come back down through these steps to think about things from both your perspective and their perspective. So there's just a couple of ways you can start anywhere in this model, on the positive or on, you know, what you want to move from, and really kind of work it all the way through, and, you know, kind of figure out what the steps might be up and down. There are hypotheses. Maybe you're going to get it right on the first time. And maybe you're going to have to practice a few times until you find the path that's going to get you truly where you want to go. You're not going to get there if you don't try, and if you don't have that kind of clear intention set. So hopefully this is useful in terms of thinking about the model. I want you to kind of really be excited about your results. And again, if we don't start knowing what we want, if we don't start kind of with that intention and asking for and giving ourselves permission to have that great result, the likelihood of us actually achieving it is much more remote. So that's the RAFT model in just a couple of minutes. And now I'm going to flip over to a model that if you were in my office, it's my intersection model. If you were in my office at SOM, you would see this on my whiteboard behind me. And many people who've had coaching conversations with me have worked through this themselves. I call it the intersections model. And my goal here is for you to be happy. So this is a model about thinking about, you know, kind of what you want to do or be or have in your life. And there's three different pieces. Oftentimes when people start looking at their work or a job, we start at the dollar sign circle. And then they might move into the star circle, which is what you're known for, what you're excellent at, where your superpowers are. And very rarely people actually are, you know, kind of starting in that heart circle, which is the things that you love, the things that give you energy, some of which you might be great at and some of which you might want to work towards. So the best opportunities typically with people in which they feel most rewarded, there's some amount of stretch. So you're not an expert in it necessarily. There's always some kind of challenge that causes you to have to put effort and work towards it. Though if you are so far away from things you love, even if you're being handsomely rewarded monetarily, it can feel kind of soul sucking. And that was the example I gave at the very beginning, where I talk to people all the time that got what they asked for and it wasn't what they counted on. And they're looking to make a pretty big pivot or change mid-career or midlife. My own story, some of you know it already. My undergraduate degree was accounting and my MBA from Stern was in finance and marketing. I was really good at finding the out of balance for discounted cash flow analysis, or doing the math for Black-Scholes options, or, you know, any number of other things that were well compensated in my wheelhouse in terms of things I was known for or good at, but pretty far away from this. And having conversations like this with you in terms of, you know, really helping you to achieve your highest potential and helping you to, as my LinkedIn profile says, get out of your own way so you can have the impact in the world that you want. So I'm now over in that space, which I call my zone of genius, where I am doing something that I love. I'm told I'm pretty good at it. And I get energy from it. I really enjoy having these types of conversations. I love that I can have today this impact across a large group of people. And I really love my one-on-one coaching conversations also, where I get some, you know, pretty direct feedback in terms of what people are able to do as a result of the conversations, and each supports the other. So this is the intersections model. What are some, you might actually recognize this if you haven't had a coaching conversation with me, because I've used this also in job targeting webinar last August, and also in the clarifying your offer in September. If sometimes this happens, people come to me and they're like, well, shoot, I don't know what I want, but I sure know what I don't want. I'm okay for you to start there too. It's useful to take an inventory. And I would say this for both of those elements that are, you know, kind of getting you to your zone of genius. What do you love and what are you good at? Please write them down. Again, I mentioned this idea of journaling before. When you write these things down, it's helpful because you might start to see some patterns. And I'm not talking about writing things down in terms of, you know, maybe I'm responsible for X, Y, and Z, and I love doing this. And, you know, get a little bit more granular in terms of the activities the interactions, the skills that you're using. And it's often cool that we take those things that we love doing and we put them together in a unique new way in a new situation. And that by being granular in terms of the whats and the whys and the whos and the wheres that you've enjoyed working and things that have given you positive energy and kind of really digging down into what really caused that to be a pleasant experience for you is helpful, because we tend to look for jobs and opportunities and solutions in the places we've always looked, and we're looking for things that we know. And what I found in the course of my coaching career is that the truly transformative ideas that really engage people and make them happy are in fact things that they had never thought of themselves before. My quick story, when I decided that I wanted to transition out of corporate finance, project finance, I was working in supply chain at the time. I said, if I weren't doing this to a few colleagues, what do you see me doing? And they said, well, you should be a coach. To which I replied, I'm athletic. What sport? So they saw things in me, which were my superpowers, my stars, my star items that I didn't recognize. I just thought everybody showed up that way and had these types of conversations with people. And they were highlighting something that was really unique and different for me, that was something that they thought that I should focus on more, or would enjoy focusing on more. So writing those things down and also asking other people, especially with regard to that star idea, really useful, because you might see yourself in a way that you hadn't seen yourself before. So a couple of ideas there on the intersections. I also want to kind of remind you that you're not a one-trick wonder. Just because you've done something in the past does not mean that is what you need to do or should do in the future. When I was interviewing for my role here at SOM, I didn't have most of what I had done with respect to my finance career on my resume. It was relevant because a lot of people that I talked to are senior executives in financial management, or in corporations or not-for-profits, executive directors, et cetera. The fact that I had broad experience over a variety of industries was relevant, not necessarily what deals I was involved in when I was actually in finance, real estate or otherwise. Some of the consulting projects that I was engaged with, I'm really proud of the work that I did in those organizations. That also wasn't something that was highlighted. The fact that I understand what consulting is and the tools that I employ to do that, and how I would bring those to bear for this population here at Yale School of Management, that was important. So it was really about translating that, using those same skills, those same ingredients to make something different. So that's the other thing I want you all to think about, is what skills do I really have that I love using, and how could I put them together in a unique new way to make something different? Hopefully that's a little bit inspiring, and hopefully you're not too hungry as I am getting ready for lunch. So the 3 questions in this model with the intersection model: what do I absolutely love doing? Again, if you want to jot these down, you can start brainstorming with them even after this session. What gives me energy? Following the energy is super important. You can think about not just activities, but you can also think about people. You can think about organizations. I know that when I was starting my coaching practice, I was saying yes to everybody, because I was in that a little bit in that space of scarcity, where if I said no to somebody, they might, I might never get another coaching client again. When what really was useful was being in that space of saying yes to the people that I did great work with and who gave me energy, so that I wasn't depleted by the time I was done with the day. And, I want for me and for all of us to do great work, doing things we love, and to have the best parts of ourselves to share with our family and friends at the end. So that's really kind of getting to that smiley face in the middle of the intersection model. That's my goal for all of us, is to be productive and happy. So the next circle, again, I mentioned this before: what am I known for? Others value you in ways you've not identified. Some of you have heard this story too. I was once introduced at a party as hey, everybody, this is Cindy. You know her. She's the one that saved the tree. Not to give the whole story, but they were referring back to a brief comment I made at a dinner some years before where I suggested that they might call an arborist to check on the health of a certain beautiful tree in the backyard. Apparently the tree was split and it was then trussed up, and it was quite interesting because I never heard the story on the back end that they'd taken me up on that suggestion, and it was really a beneficial thing to have done. Everybody else knew that about me. I didn't know that of myself. So useful as well as we're thinking about making pivots, for example. If you are known for certain things that really pigeonhole you into the thing that you want to move away from, useful to know that as we start to affect some changes in marketing, in LinkedIn and conversation stories that you tell, where you want to showcase something that's different. So this is kind of a useful piece of information on a variety of levels. So hopefully you can, kind of start to play with what your superpowers are and think about what you want people to think about as your superpowers. That'll come into any smart marketing for new ideas as we're negotiating new ideas and different things. And then we go over to this idea of, what do organizations need that I might be beneficial in? And again, my comment earlier, we tend to look for what we've always looked for in the places we've always looked. This is something I talked about quite often, or at quite length in my summertime webinar, the hidden job market. Jobs are out there. If you're not looking for what's right for you, or if you've never heard of it, if you didn't know the job existed, when people suggested I should be a coach, I'd never even contemplated that. I hadn't studied HR, and I thought coaching was an HR thing. It really is a human capital and performance thing, which is very different than what HR was when I, was graduating from college and early in my career. It's evolved in quite wonderful ways, and I'm happy to be doing the work that I'm doing today. This job didn't exist back then. So that's something else to think about, especially as we're navigating this really bizarre year that's 2020. The way we consume and what companies need and how they go to market may change in the future. So the thing that you thought you wanted, or that you would have been perfect for last year, that job might not exist next year. So again, if we come back to these skills and we think about needs, that's going to be really useful as you think about what you might set yourself up for next. So there you go. One last thing on this one. Nature abhors a vacuum. So a lot of people come to coaching or come to me and say, you know what, I'm not sure what I want, but I know what I don't want. So you can take time and list those things out too. And I encourage people to write them down and to list them out until they are so disgusted with themselves, they can't even think another negative thought. I don't want to do this again. I never want to be in this situation again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Walk away from it, shake it off, do whatever you need to do, to release that negative energy, and then come back to that list and say, if not that, then what? Because in the absence of something new, the old thing will come back. So as we think about the RAFT model, in the absence of knowing in advance what the new thoughts are that you want to think instead of the old thoughts will come rushing in. Because again, if you're in the amygdala, if you're activated, you don't have access to the prefrontal cortex to be able to come up with these new ideas. So if we're intentional about what we do want, it makes it a lot easier to find those things, or to ask for those things, or to set ourselves up to get them. Again, we find what we seek. So let's be really clear about what we seek, not what we don't want, because again, we manifest what we focus on. And if you're constantly in that mindset of saying, I want to protect myself from this, I want to protect myself from this, that's the thing you're focusing on. And the likelihood of you getting something better is going to be diminished by that. So that is my intersections model. And last but not least, I want to talk to you about a wild success framework. And this is actually the model that I was intending to talk about from the start, though realize that some of these other models would be really, really useful for you. I've shared this with people in individual coaching conversations, and I shared it with our EMBA students more than a year ago. So I think this is going to be new for most people. My wild success framework basically looks at an interaction. So this could be a difficult conversation you're about to have. This could be an interview you're preparing for. This could be an aspirational meeting in an elevator with somebody who you think is going to be really powerful and useful in your career search. So they could be big things. It could be for a an exploratory conversation about a potential business merger. So a couple of things that are important here, and I'll walk you through them in a little bit more detail in a couple further slides. Walking through the pieces here, interaction is the first thing I've got up here. Please know that we're not talking about the end result, at the conclusion of your relationship. We're talking about whatever the next step in the relationship might be, not the whole relationship. So an example where you want to be mindful of timing is, a lot of times when people are in job search, they're really excited and anxious to kind of move forward quickly because they want the offer. If you're working on a couple offers at the same time, you don't necessarily want everything to work at the same time, to come together at different times. You might want to kind of space things out a little bit so that they can actually, so you can evaluate multiple offers at the same time, as opposed to looking at one saying, well, shoot, I'm not going to know if I'm going to get this other one for 2 weeks, and I'm going to have to say yes to this or no to that. Or so think about the interaction. It's the interaction today, and what do you want the result to be at the end of today? So you might not want the offer. You might want to take just the next step towards that offer where you're building rapport and it's increasing the likelihood that the offer is coming, but you're not wanting to rush it. So again, looking at the two pieces, know, believe, feel, and do. I've written this in the know column or row, though it's something that we're going to do for both groups. So facts are things that are observable. Water is made up of 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. That's a fact. The apparent color of water or of water vapor in the sky is a belief that's based on perspective, and even the cones in your eye. Different people perceive things to be different. So facts are different from beliefs. Sometimes people have repeated a belief so many times in their head that they believe that to be fact. This is where I kind of dive in and I look for the evidence and say, what proof do we have for that? So really wanting to be really clear about the difference between facts and beliefs. Credible sources, indisputable evidence. You have access to certain facts currently. The other side, whoever you're talking to, might also have access to those same facts or different ones. You want to sometimes make sure that they have access to the facts that are important for this conversation. So let's be really clear about what those are so that they can be brought up in really resonant language so people understand them. So facts, beliefs, feelings. We ignore feelings so often in business, and it's so important, especially if we're talking about, for example, the job search, right? We're making decisions about, do we want to bring this person into the organization, or will I be a good fit? How do I feel about this company? Do I believe, do I feel comfortable? Do I believe I'm going to be successful in this environment and that these people are going to, support me and respect me? Those feelings are important, and they also influence word choice. This is sometimes important when I talk to people about the difference between, in job search, attraction and seduction. Look at me, I'm really smart, I'm the best candidate, and yada, yada, yada. That's seduction. And that's, kind of sometimes setting people apart from, not creating connection to the people you're talking to. So I want you to really think about, how do you want these folks to feel? And if you're really seeking to kind of create strong connection where people like you, which is going to set you up better for negotiations in the future, should the offer come along, and or excuse me, this might not be the ideal offer, though the outstanding opportunity that is really right for you is going to be something that they're going to create because they like you and because they see the opportunity. This has just happened to somebody I talked to recently, where they interviewed for one job, really showed the people who they were and what they could do, and it would have been a really good job, but the hiring manager and the company president came back and said, we have something that's actually better for you and will create greater value for the company. And you know, I don't think it gets any better than that. So sometimes you don't get what you thought you wanted and you get something better. So set yourself up for that. Uh, the language you use is going to influence how people feel. So are you looking to be smart, or are you looking to, you know, really identify the points of wonderful connection, letting people know what it's going to be like to spend time with you? So that's going to influence your word choice. The last one, do, it might seem obvious, but it's not necessarily so obvious. I can't tell you the number of times when I've talked to people and they said, I sent the note, I haven't gotten a response, I'm really frustrated. And I would stop and say, well, cool, show me the note. And then when we read through it, there were in fact there was no question, no specific request of something to do. And there was no specific request in terms of feedback by a date or time. So we really need to, if we want something specific, ask for that thing that's specific and do so in a way that it makes it easy for that person to follow through with it and to know what's expected. So same on your point, on your side, you might want to have a great conversation where you want to, in a job interview, for example, figure out if you want to move forward or not. You might get some really good feedback that says, this might not be the right organization for me, in which case you can make a choice at the end that I have sufficient information now to withdraw from this process and focus on ones that are really more appropriate for me. So the do goes on both your side and on their side. So a last idea here is that if you're actually going in for an interview and there might be a bunch of different people, please remember that each person is going to come with a different perspective. And I talk about this in unpacking job descriptions and many other interviewing focused webinars. You're talking to different people and you have different interdependencies in the organization with different groups. Those people are going to have different dashboards and they're going to care about different things. So you really want to think about, what do they care about in language that's important to them? And I'll speak a little teeny bit more about that on a future slide. Coming close to the end though, so get ready with your questions if you have them. We're proactively designing the conversation to achieve the desired outcomes in the Wild Success Framework. One last point here, thoughtfully and intentionally choose language that is succinct, specific, and generous. We're not actually leaving any question in terms of what's expected. We're being really, really focused on what's most important, and we're using language that is important and relevant to the organization that we're talking to. Sales 101, a confused mind will not buy. And if you seem confused, if the person you're talking to understands that or doesn't understand what you're offering, they're not likely to buy. So this confusion is really unfortunate. So this really powerful intention is the other side of it. So I want to make sure that you're really, you're thoughtful about, even from a hypothetical standpoint, it seems that from reviewing this information and the research I've done, this could be a good connection. I'd love to explore this. You don't know for sure, and you have a very clear intention for a conversation. The other thing I want to remind you is our brains are all wildly different. They're wired so differently. So you really do need to speak to the person that you're talking to and do some perspective taking before the conversation to make sure that you're sharing it in ways that is going to be helpful to that person and that they understand it. The other thing I mentioned before is that you want to take it one step at a time. You do not want to walk in, kind of with a marriage proposal on a first date. You want to really think about, where are we in this relationship and what is the appropriate next step? Because if you try to rush things, and this happens to a lot of people I talk to, they're so clear about where we need to go and what we need to do. They don't realize that most of the people that they're talking to aren't there yet in whatever that change program might be. So we have to talk to people where they are. Even if we have a bigger vision, we need to bring them into that vision with us and allow them to have the same epiphanies and the same insights that we had along the way by how we bring things up in the conversation. So one step at a time, and know where you are in the relationship and the health of the relationship. last thing, and I said this as well already, we really want to be clear about the language that's important to the people we're talking to. The first time I used this framework really was my first job out of college. I was an auditor with Deloitte and Touche way back in the days when it was still Deloitte and Touche, at the year that they merged. If anybody else remembers when we had the big 8 accounting firms and they became the big 6, and this was before consulting got spun off. I had a really, really smart partner. And I knew that in my first review with him, as I was presenting to him what my team had done in terms of the audit work for this particular client, I was either going to have a 15-minute conversation or I was going to have a 3-hour conversation, because the 15-minute conversation said that I was addressing his needs and he felt really confident that I had done the work in ways that would help him to feel comfortable in signing off on that work. And the 3-hour conversation would mean that he didn't have the confidence that I had actually thoroughly analyzed things in a way that would protect him from liability if anything was missed. So he was going to have to kind of get into some detail-oriented, challenging work with me. I was clear I wanted the 15-minute conversation. I spent a lot of time preparing to have that 15-minute conversation, thinking about what he cared about, thinking about how he might ask a question, thinking about how to answer it succinctly in a way that he understood that I had backup to share with him if he asked for it. That took a lot of effort, and I had the conversation I wanted. Sometimes we don't do that preparation. We wind up having a whole lot of meetings, which if we'd only done the preparation up front, we would have had one meeting and it would have been a lot more expedient. So anyway, that's important in terms of thinking, who am I talking to and what do they care about? And again, if there's multiple people or multiple interviews, you're not doing it for a company, you're working with people. So you're having those conversations or doing that perspective taking with each person. So that was it for the models. Bringing it back to the beginning, where I said, you don't get what you don't ask for. A confused mind doesn't buy, and we find what we seek, or we get what we focus on. So I'm hoping that as we think about intention setting, you have a couple of new frameworks that you might use in different situations to really clarify what you're looking for in business or in life, in conversations with even family members over the holidays, as you're contemplating what you might like to be when you grow up, as you're thinking about the impact you want to have in the world, or as you are talking to somebody about maybe what your next promotion might be or what your next great project might be that you're going to be inspired by. A bunch of different tools, and I suspect that many of you, I don't see any questions yet, so please, if you have questions, please bring them so we can talk about them here today. And if you have a question, I suspect that other people do as well. If not, you can certainly get me in a coaching conversation afterwards. In moving into the wrap up, there are prior webinars. I did refer to a couple of other webinars in this session. You are able to go see those on the Alumni Career Portal. You're also able to see those on the Yale School of Management YouTube page. And then please also check out the upcoming events, as we are excited about what's coming in 2021. And I don't know about you, but I'm really excited to say thank you to 2020 for all of the lessons, and let's get on with something new. So as we are wrapping up here, I just want to move into this space of the Q&A. So Kayla, I'm not sure that I see any questions yet. I'm curious, do you have any questions, or has anything come to you separately?
I haven't seen anything come in either. I don't know if anyone has any questions they can put in the Q&A box or the chat right now.
It's kind of funny. This topic, it's when I've presented in the past, my experience is it gets people thinking and it gets them in their heads, and it's going to take a little while to process some of these ideas, and probably are looking at a couple of places where you could actually employ a few of these models already. So it's quite funny. I'm not actually surprised that there aren't questions, Though if anyone does have a question about how to do something or how to make it more useful or which model to use, I'm certainly happy to find out there. I'm seeing a couple of, I see a couple things in the chat. I don't see questions in the Q&A. Okay, which model might be the best? Here's a question on the Q&A. Which might be the best for working with prospective clients? It depends on what kind of clients you're talking about. It seems like if I can think about what that would mean to me, I would have started already with the intersections model, so I know who my ideal prospective client is, because again, some of them drive our energy and some of them don't. Okay, the follow-up is high school students and their parents. It really could be any of these models, depending on what their question is. So for high school students and their parents, I want, especially our young people, I have a high schooler myself. I want him to be happy. When he was young and I asked him, or he asked me what I wanted him to be when he grew up, I told him that I wanted him to be happy. And he's like, Mom, I know you want me to be happy, but what do you want me to do? And I was like, oh, that's a much different question. I want you to do the things that make you happy. So really kind of starting in that space and really getting clear with what people's values are. It's kind of hard sometimes with high schoolers and their parents, because a lot of parents want to live vicariously through their children. And I'm really a firm believer in, we are all very unique and different, and what might be right for one person might not be right for the other person. So that intersection model and really knowing yourself could be powerful. It also could be really powerful to play with the RAFT template, as you might be having some issues where somebody says something and you might be triggered, and you have this thought and you do this thing and you say that thing. And I'll be honest with you, kind of right before this session started, I'd asked my son to go out and start shoveling because I wanted him to be out of the house and not online while I was delivering my webinar. And I was, kind of trying to get into this zone, and I couldn't because there was stuff going on in the background here. So I might have been a little bit snappier than I'd like to be. And just knowing kind of what sets you off and what you need, and making really clear requests of other people about how you need them to be or why. Any of these models, the Wild Success Framework model works there too, but just the RAFT model and understanding what your thinking is and what your ideal result is, and then helping the other person to understand what that is, so that it's a group aligned model and not just something that is important to you and isn't important to them. So hopefully those questions, that answers how I might use each or any or all of the three there. If we're aligning different teams, here comes the questions now. If we're aligning different teams, again, I might think about the Wild Success Framework. And I remember years ago when I worked at Diageo, I was often, as a finance person, in different meetings, because where in the past I hadn't invited finance to the meetings because finance often just said, no, you can't do this. The teams realized that when I was in the room with them, they were smarter. And I might hear one organization, procurement, for example, saying one thing, and our operations or conversion organization saying another thing. And these guys are arguing. And I would be able to step back and say, let me check on some things here. You're saying you want this and this and this. Yes. You're saying you want this and this and this. Yes. Okay. You guys are in violent agreement. Here are all the ways that you're asking for the same thing. You're just talking different language. So the Wild Success Framework, in terms of really being clear about what desired outcomes might be, when we can then get into and align on those outcomes and really get into and understand facts, we might see a little bit more about how well aligned we are. And it might be easier for us to do some gap analysis between there and some differences. The same might be also the RAFT template, where you're understanding that different people have different perspectives and they see things differently. So even just sharing when you do this, this happens, or my experience is this, that's kind of great feedback language. When this happens, or when you do this, my experience is, where it's not, kind of so pointing at you. and you make a request about something different, or helping people to understand those interdependencies. So a couple of different things, and I'm happy to, I know the person who's asking this question about aligning teams, I'm happy to have some, role play conversations with you on this in a coaching conversation if you want to dive into it in some greater detail. Another question that's come in, I'm an architect, interior designer, and I'm looking to add a whole new part of my services, online design focused on men, looking to engage a new base of clients as well as a partner to collaborate. I might start for this model. I might, get into that, kind of intersection model to start and really be clear about what's going to make you happy and what you're good at. What you're good at, and as you're talking about partnering, one, I want you to make sure that you're only bringing in ideal clients that are going to give you energy. On the other side, I want to make sure that you're really clear about what your superpowers are, and in partnering with somebody else, you're not only partnering with somebody who's going to give you energy and who you're not going to have issues with doing this. It's going to be much more of a really nice interpersonal dynamic where you're supporting one another and where your strengths are filling in gaps with the other person's strengths, and you're really better together and stronger together. Those are questions that you might kind of start with the intersections model. I then might pop out to the Wild Success Framework and think about, from an avatar perspective, who are my ideal clients? Who are these people that we're trying to attract? And then you're going to start to think about, what do they know? What do they believe? What are the problems that they're experiencing? And how is it that you're coming forward and solving them? And you're sharing then really clear language to have them feel confident that you're going to do great work for them, and that's you're the right partner. So again, I'm using a couple of the models, and all models are wrong. I'll put that out there too. I learned this a long time ago, and some are useful. So they're all really kind of looking at things in one way, one slice. So this is why, a couple of them coming together is a robust toolkit. Hopefully that helps a little bit with that one. Potential opportunities to identify superpowers, blind spots. Absolutely. Ask people. Simply ask people. I know some folks are reaching out to folks, and I don't know if you've ever played with a word cloud. You can actually go out and ask people 5 words. As you think of me, 5 words or 5 superpowers. What do I do better than anyone else? And it's really sometimes interesting what comes back. And some things you notice and some things you don't. When you get feedback, I want to encourage you to be thankful for everything. And if something doesn't make sense, ask about it. Wow, that's different. I haven't heard that before. Tell me more. And you're going to learn something that's going to be powerful and useful. So the quick thing is ask, and also think about, what in the past, where have I succeeded and what skills did I use? Or when things go pear-shaped, when do people call me, and what is it that I do for them? So you might start to notice things that way. I'm conscious that we're kind of coming up to the top of the hour. I see one more question. How does one get the courage to follow what one wants to do when one is worried that going another way might be more lucrative? All I can say is I don't get paid at Yale what I got paid when I worked in New York. And I am such a happier person today. We all have values, and what's important to one person in one day, or what's important to one person may be different than what's important to another. And if I weren't getting paid anything, I couldn't keep doing this work. So there's some give and take there. So, I mean, where do you get the courage? I mean, I want you to be happy. And if you don't actually kind of do the work to figure out what's going to make you happy, I don't want you to be 10 years older and, feeling the same things that you're feeling today. So if you're not feeling really happy and rewarded. So the courage is, kind of understanding opportunity cost and kind of being bold and stepping forward. It's, we're looking at a shiny new year. Hopefully you make something here today has inspired you to do something small that's different, that gets you a little bit closer to that, and to at least try. So with that, it's 1. Kayla, I think I got most of the questions here. Anything else you see that we need to do to be complete?
No, I think we're all set. Thanks, Cindy. I know we always appreciate hearing from you.
I am delighted to be here, and Happy New Year, everyone. I'll see you on the other side in 2021.